Hello horror hounds. It's a truth long now accepted that video games are getting more and more cinematic, whilst there are pretty much uniformly no good movies based on video games. That said, I don't think it's true that there are no good or at least enjoyable movies inspired by video games, and I'd argue that the best, most enjoyable video game inspired movie franchise not based on a specific game is the Underworld franchise. I've got absolutely no qualms about saying that I love the Underworld franchise. I've been trying to think of a way of talking about the films without just reviewing them. I thought about ranking them, and honestly, although there are variances in quality, some of them are so tight and the stories rely on the previous films, or in some cases the next film that comes along in the franchise, that even ranking them proved pointless. From what was pitched as Romeo and Juliet with vampires and werewolves has become, whilst light and frothy, a kind of epic saga. At this stage, there really is little point pulling out one film and looking at it out of context when every film in the 5 movie franchise so far benefits, some to a greater, some to a lesser extent, from the films that came before it, and also the ones that come after it. Has actually got quite a detailed mythos to it that I enjoy. Now, I know that there's a cheese factor to these films. It's one of the reasons I enjoy them. I know it's not high art. I know most people say, as long as you get Kate Beckinsale in a tight PVC outfit, jumping around, shooting guns, then they'll go and buy more tickets to go and see these films. And on one level, that's kind of how it works. I absolutely adore the fact that the ethos of these films seems to be to package it like that, with vampires versus werewolves, apart from one of the movies, put Kate Beckinsale front and centre doing her amazing thing, and then people it with ridiculously well-respected British thespians. Honestly, the enjoyment I get out of that, even though some of it I think is a little tongue-in-cheek, links right back to the effort and attention put into material that was perhaps beneath them from the likes of Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, the great Peter Cushing, the amazing Christopher Lee, Vincent Price. You know, classically trained actors putting all of their skills to material that most people would just roll their eyes. Oh, and what, another Underworld film? God, I thought that franchise had ended. That's still going? They're still making Underworld movies? Well, do you know what? Yeah, they are. And Charles Dance is in them, and Derek Jacobi's in them, and Bill Nye is in them, and Michael Sheen's in them, and they're fun. With pretensions of epic Shakespearean tragedy that always devolves into vampires and werewolves kicking 7 shades of shit out of one another, usually ending in a boss battle and some kind of level up straight out of video game thinking. Let's rattle through the series as it stands now, rather than try and rank them. Let's just revel in them. So let's kick off with the first one, Underworld. Come for Kate Beckinsale, stay for Michael Sheen and Bill Nye. That's not to do down Kate Beckinsale in this at all. She is clearly the glue that holds this entire franchise together. And actually, over the course of 5 now movies, she's had such a glacial shift in character, whilst almost seeming to stay the same. She really does quite well play a deathless, immortal character who kind of changes over the centuries rather than over the years, whose life in this movie and everything she believed is thrown into complete and utter flux. I love how sweaty and hairy the Lycans are hanging around in the sewers. Rewatching these recently made me comment, are there any female Lycans in this, or is it just a bunch of dudes in leather coats stripping off and fighting each other? I hadn't realised quite how homoerotic the Lycans were until I rewatched this recently. But they're a wonderful counterpoint to the louche Euro trash sleazy vampires hanging around their fortified estates, getting drunk, probably having orgies. An empire falling in on itself with its own decadence that really needs to fall now, with the wolves literally at the door. Bring the crisis to boiling point with some political intrigue and machinations that are sort of simmering beneath pretty much all of these stories, and bring Victor back from his slumber. And then the movie finds another gear. Bill Nye just completely inhabits Victor in all of his phases here. Do you remember how he's so gaunt and he's hooked up to all of these blood infusion contraptions to slowly put some flesh back onto his skin and bones? Now bring in Michael Sheen as Lucian. What is he, a terrorist, a freedom fighter? I love the fact that you find out more about him as the series progresses. Played by Michael Sheen, as I say. I saw him a few years ago on stage in the West End as Hamlet. This dude is a serious actor and makes no bones about the fun he's having in this role and loves it. One of the features on Rise of the Lycans, he was talking about how actors get to do all kinds of things, and he didn't see fighting vampires and werewolves as any less valid than playing Hamlet on the stage in the West End Theatre of London. And I thank you for that. As a genre fan, I like my actors who commit, who understand that it's fun and don't take the piss out of it. Everything centres around Michael, Scott Speedsman's character, and ultimately he becomes this hybrid between a vampire and a werewolf, potentially limitlessly powerful. And this notion of a hybrid is going to continue throughout all of these movies. And I think it's going to become the seam that could ultimately cap off an epic story if they tell the right sixth story. So in gaming parlance, it ends with a level up for Michael, and it ends with a boss battle against lots of foot soldiers, lots of death dealers, and the big boss, Victor, with Celine and Michael versus Victor. And then that was that. When the sequel came out, and after I'd seen that, I didn't really think, okay, there's the story told there. I didn't really think a sequel was warranted. And when I first watched Evolution, I really didn't like it. It seemed so clearly to have a gaming mechanic to it. Personally, this film has risen in my eyes because I think subsequent films have sort of helped put flesh on the bones of the story of this one. This now is rollicking good fun. It's a full throttle charge towards the basic stripped down story mechanics of the Underworld franchise. Plus, you've got your theatrical lovies, you've got Derek Jacobi as Alexander Corvinus, the first immortal, Tony Curran as Marcus, one of his sons, one of the three vampire elders, and Stephen McIntosh as Tanis, whose character, the importance of that character, a little throwaway character in this, becomes much more important in the next one. Don't think that just because your character is small and has a small part to tell in this story that they won't become hugely important later on. Amelia is probably the greatest example of that. Of the three vampire elders, Marcus, Victor and Amelia, Amelia hardly gets any screen time in Underworld before she's killed. She's really poorly done by, but her legacy becomes probably more important than either of those two later on in the franchise. We see her briefly in the medieval prologue of this movie, hinting at the flashback movie to come. So Michael's leveled up in the last one. Celine levels up at the end of this one after drinking Alexander Corvinus's blood. Marcus is resurrected. He's leveled up with these amazing wings. And what we just had sort of verbally from the first film about Alexander Corvinus, the first immortal who had two sons, one bitten by a wolf, one bitten by a vampire, kind of with hints there. Do you not think of Romulus and Remus, and they became the first vampire and the first werewolf? We get to return to that myth, explore it more, find out what happened to them, but also how the story that was told and put about by Victor was a lie. And I love the way that history comes back and bites people on the ass, and what people thought they knew were lies. And a character like Tanis introduced in this, the sort of history keeper of the elders, knows all the secrets. And by the time we flash back to Rise of the Lycans, we get to see his involvement in the events as they actually unfolded, rather than as Victor would have them remembered. But ultimately, it all boils down to an enormous fight with a crashed helicopter between a leveled up Selene, who's drunk the blood of the first immortal, a hybrid Michael, versus the first vampire and the first werewolf. And please don't try and tell me that William, the first ever werewolf, who in his frenzy could never turn back from his wolf form, so dangerous that he's trapped in a sarcophagus for centuries, is not a cool freaking werewolf, because he's awesome. This is kind of a Fast and Furious movie of the Underworld franchise. It just goes. And if you're doing a marathon, you actually like it for that, because Rise of the Lycans gets heavy. And I love Rise of the Lycans. It's the only one that doesn't occur over 1, 2, 3 nights of crisis. If you watch these all, you'll see that Celine's life was probably the same for hundreds of years as a death dealer, and she accepted what was told of her. And then on this night of crisis, when she meets Michael, everything changes. Evolution continues that crisis, but only happens over a couple of nights. This is a much more stately affair. They're really going with the Shakespearean vibe again. They're trying to get a sort of Macbethy kind of thing going on with this, and it's also a wonderful way of getting Bill Nighy and Michael Sheen back. Shit, we killed them both in the first film. Both. You know, we probably didn't think we were going to get a sequel. Here we are on the third film, and we killed off those two amazing actors. So let's let them flex their muscles and do their shit again. Rona Mitra is an excellent stand-in for Selene. You can see why Victor has sort of molded Selene into Sonia's image, and more importantly, the reason that she's sacrificed and they attempted to kill Michael, all conveyed by the reaction on Bill Nighy's eyes, is the knowledge that there is a child, their child, developing within her, the first hybrid. And the very idea, just as Victor tries to wipe out history and rewrite it, he takes actions here and now to try and wipe out the first ever hybrid. And it's the threat of that potential future, the potential mixing of the bloodlines that scares him so much that he sets events in motion here in the third film that eventually lead to his downfall centuries later. But this notion of a hybrid keeps recurring in the Underworld franchise, and it's something that I think ultimately it should be about. It just didn't happen in the way we all expected it to. Underworld Awakening came on, and if I can use more gaming terminology, this film felt like a side quest. It didn't feel like part of the main story. With this film and the latest one, Blood Wars, they've seemed to have stumbled and then refound their footing because of the loss of Scott Speedman, who plays Michael. I don't know why he doesn't want to come back. I don't know what's going on there. If anyone knows, please tell me, but I guess it's all going to be rumour and guesswork. No one's going to really know for sure, but the loss of Michael, to my eyes, for a long time really hurt the ongoing story. So like I say, this one felt like a side quest. Celine wakes up after being cryogenically frozen for a long time and spends the entire time, again, what is it, a couple of nights trying to find Michael, and we get the impression by the end of the film that once she finds Michael again, she can continue with the life that she'd set herself. And that's what these films are all about, aren't they? They chuck in Eve here, her daughter, and in hindsight, now that the story seems to be going in the way that it is, we're put in her shoes. If you think about it, this character Michael, that a ton of the fans love and probably won't get over losing, especially not after the revelation in Blood Wars, we're suddenly thrown into a film without him. Well, where's this character, this hybrid that's supposed to be the all-powerful future of this franchise, and who's this kid and everything? It seems like we're being asked to accept an awful lot of stuff that we're not comfortable with. Isn't that exactly what happens to Celine in this movie? Aren't we in her shoes, and the way everything's going feels uncomfortable and wrong to her, just as it does to us. This is clearly the weakest in the franchise. What I will say is that the battle at the end is fucking excellent. We've got a super souped up werewolf. We've got Stephen Rea fighting Eve, who is a true-born hybrid. Okay, so here, now, centuries later, is a thing born that scared Victor so much centuries ago with Lucien and his own daughter, Sonia. Now with Eve, that thing that he tried to crush, even the possibility of it existing, is now alive and out in the world. It's just kind of like in this film, I don't want to deal with all of that kind of shit. When you're talking about injections and stuff like that, and Integen and or whatever it's called, and the humans now know about the vampires and the Lycans and stuff like that, and they're doing experiments and stuff. Oh, I kind of don't want to know about any of that. It's all changed. I don't like it. The fight at the end is fucking excellent. It's brilliant in 3D. It's brutal. They bring in I forget what the character's called, but they bring him in, this new young vampire dude that's so obviously supposed to be the love interest for Celine. I love the fact that she's not interested. I love the fact that she only cares about finding Michael and sort of has to try and learn to care about Eve, or at least start doing the right thing about her. We've got Charles Dance in this one as one of the elder vampires. So continuing the trend of respected British thespians sticking on the fangs and having some fun. Which brings us finally so far to the not yet released on home entertainment, so I can't hold it up. Blood Wars, which I've only seen once at the cinema when it came out, and I like the way it hints that it's potentially going. Again, we get another level up with Celine when they do that weird, the Nordic vampires do that weird go beyond the veil of death thing, and she comes back with highlights and a kick-ass fur coat. But we're back to the political intrigues. We're back to, as with Craven and Lucien in the first couple of films, we're back to intrigues between the vampires and the Lycans, and there's another Lycan, a super Lycan on the scene, causing trouble. I guess contract negotiations made it clear that Scott Spearman was never coming back, so there's a horrible revelation for any fans of the character of Michael, hoping that Celine and he would get back together again, finding out that this super Lycan has been basically juicing himself up with Michael's blood, and that no, he never really made it far beyond awakening, and I sort of dissected him and have been using him. This is the last file of him, and I'm going to use it to kick your fucking ass with. That's kind of nasty. It's a lot it's more of the same, but by this point, I kind of love the world we're in. Yeah, there are level ups. Yeah, there are more boss battles. There's more revelations, though. Amelia's relationship with Charles Dance's character is of vital importance in this, and she leaves a little vial of her blood for David. That's it. Is it David to drink? Because when you drink, when the vampires drink someone's blood, they can have access to all their memories. So even now, still in the fifth installment, events from hidden secret events from the past are coming back to change the present. And with the appearance right at the end as a coda of Eve, and with the suggestion that Eve and Celine are going to be together again, I would like for there to be just one more film. So the first three films would be about the creation of Michael as a hybrid, and we find out why that's such a horror to Victor and why he wants to destroy Michael because of the first hybrid developing within the womb of his own daughter. And then we could have a second trilogy of films about the second ever hybrid born from Michael and Celine as Eve, and maybe get the chance to see what all the fuss is about. We now have a young adult hybrid out in the world. What can a hybrid do? Show us. What's the new world order? And how many lower jaws need to get ripped off and heads chopped in half, and how many bullets fired and shit like that? How many fights, ass-kicking fights, do we have to reach that new world order? But we could have one more film, please, to round out a pair of trilogies to finally show us what Victor feared coming to pass.